Hi everyone and welcome to the webinar this afternoon. Today's subject is service call within Unit 4. So a little bit of housekeeping today. We are recording the session, which will be available to you following today's webinar. We do have a Q&A session at the end. Please use the chat facility to ask any questions that you may have. So I've got Dave joining me today from our technical team, and Dave will take you through the session and explain a little bit more about what the service call workshop is going to be about. I'm going to hand over to Dave now, who is going to take you through the next part of this webinar. Dave?
Yeah, hi everyone. Okay, so these are the four headlines we're going to be running through today. So just what the goal of this workshop, the structure, what the minimum requirements are, and then a little bit of feedback at the end. So personally, I've done quite a lot of development around service call functions. So how I've kind of structured this and planned this out is basically just based on my experience of what I've done for other clients. So, but looking to kind of possible use cases from other people that we can shape and put in as exercises to a potential course. So, but what we were planned to do, like around the course, is to introduce the concept and appropriate use cases for service call function that we would use in Unit 4. Part of that will be to revisit briefly what we'd already covered in the API workshop. So we'll be touching on the SOAP web services, the REST APIs, and kind of doing a little refresher around two of the testing tools that we use, which is SOAP UI and Postman. We will configure and use a service call function within the Unit 4 ERP application. So that will be to actually take a use case and kind of build it from the ground up. So it's like an end-to-end example and one we can test and see the end result. We'll also cover off the limitations and potential pitfalls of service call function. That's definitely one that I've put in based on some of my experiences. Generally very good, but there are a few things that you just need to watch out for when you're using it. We'll do some practical testing of service call function. So we'll be using Unit 4 ERP forms. So yeah, we'll be kicking off that, and that will be passing data into one of the Unit 4 master files, but we don't know what master files yet, because that's one of the things we're looking to kind of gather from you guys today. But we'll also at the end of that just kind of do a little comparison of like what you can do with service call, what you can't, what you can do with Unit 4 extension kit. So hopefully what we'll be able to do at the end of that course is you'll understand where service call is appropriate and where extension kit might be a better option. So now on to the structure. So the plan is to run it as a one-day online workshop. So typically we run our one-day workshops from 9:30 till 4:30. For those of you that book by the 14th, there is a slightly reduced price there. So concept and use cases. So we'll understand the concept of like what service call function is and what we typically use it for, and discover some common use cases. So the full end-to-end process of like creating a form, creating a service call is quite long. So we're going to have to be quite selective over those use cases. But as I said in the beginning, I'd like to be able to kind of build a very basic form, then do the service call, and then do the testing, so you can kind of see it right from the beginning all the way through. So I have some use cases in mind, but again, like I said, if you've got any feedback as what you'd like to see, I'd really be happy to accommodate that. And also we'll talk about AG16s, because we are waving goodbye to AG16s. It's a sad time, I know, for most people, but basically service call functions and potentially extension kit is what's going to be replacing them. So then we'll cover off web services and APIs. So this is where we'll do the refresh. So we'll have a quick look at SOAP web services and REST APIs again. As I said, we cover it off in the API workshop, but we'll quickly go over what's available. We'll look at the documentation, the Swagger page. For those of you that don't know what that is just a link in your own environment where you can see what public API is available. And then we'll refresh on where you can get reference documentation. Testing tools, we'll also revisit this. So again, although we don't want to keep going over old ground, I personally think it's a good idea to have a quick refresher on SOAP UI and Postman. We're not going to go into as much detail as we do in the API workshop, but it will just kind of quick setup, have a look at it, and do a very quick test to get us up and running. Then actually setting up the service call function setup. So the idea around the course will be to have a simple form exercise. So rather than come in with a pre-built form that doesn't really mean a lot to the delegates, the plan was to kind of build like a nice simple form, something really straightforward. I don't know, like a cost center request form, or maybe something a little bit more complicated than that, like a customer or supply request form, but just to keep it like really simple. And then we can move on to configuring a service call function. So what I will try and do is one full example, so form, service call, but where we've got different types of service call, one where we're using SOAP, one where we're using the REST APIs. We'll probably have to kind of like break it down. So one exercise is just the service call and another one is like the full end-to-end process. But we will try and the point will be to cover those three scenarios. Reason why they're different. So REST API using a post method and REST API using patch method. So the difference between those is post is creating a new record. So for example, creating a new supplier, creating a new employee, creating a new customer, whereas patch is actually updating an existing record. We do cover the differences and we do testing in the API workshop around those. So for those of you that were on that core, on that workshop, hopefully you'll remember that or recognize those terms. The idea will to put that into practice using the service call function and using a form. So we do that again because they are quite different. So for those of you that remember the workshop, doing a post and doing a patch is very different. So then moving on to testing. So once we've done all of the configuration, we will then kind of go into a phase in the course where we're going to start testing what we've built. So we'll obviously fill out our form, which will kick off a workflow. And then what we'll try and do is build in some planned errors so we can look at possible errors that you might get and then how you can debug them using the workflow log file. And then finally, once we've got to the end of the exercise, we've got a form that's working, it's updating our master file, we'll then start kind of looking at what can and can't be done. So we would have obviously have a working example at the end of the course, but we'll be looking at what you can't do and what we maybe could potentially do in extension kit. Also, what is different in ERPX. So for example, SOAP web services are gone in ERPX. And then we'll have a look at a few advanced workarounds to some of those limitations that we find. Yeah, as I said, we'll just then wrap up with where we could use extension kit to replace service call function and what our other options are. So that will just be a wrap-up session and just bring a couple of examples where you can't do one thing using service call function, but you can in extension kit. But yeah, main focus will be on service call functions. Okay, so minimum requirements. So obviously we're not going to be doing all of the training for the prerequisites for this course. So it is expected that you'd have a fairly decent understanding of Unit4 ERP system, specifically technical. So you have some experience using the APIs. That's why it would be handy. And that's why this follows on from the API workshop. But if you have some technical understanding, that's good. Good understanding of ERP forms and flexi fields. So obviously part of the exercises, like I've said, will involve building a Unit4 ERP form. So there will be an expectation that you've done that before, that we won't have to explain flexi fields or anything like that. Understanding of JSON and XML. So it's either that or you have attended the API workshop, because we cover a lot of JSON and XML file structures in that. Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge are the typical browsers that we use. Citrix Receiver for your operating system. So we will use our own Embridge environments to do the course. We shouldn't need too much access in desktop. but we would typically give you access to an environment. So, and that environment is in a Citrix environment. So it's useful to have a Citrix receiver pre-installed before. For those of you Unit4 Cloud and have access to desktop, you'll already have that anyway. And then a free version of Postman and SOAP UI. Again, these are the tools that we've used in the API workshop. So if you've not attended that, I would probably recommend it first as a prerequisite. And if you have attended it, you've probably got Postman and SOAP UI already. So yeah, they're free to use, free to download, and they are the tools we use as part of setting up our example. So that will remain the case. And that is it. So it's quite a brief overview at the moment. We're running this session so that if there's anything you feel would be useful, would love to hear your opinion.
Thank you, Dave, for joining us today.
Thanks a lot. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Take care.